This marvelous life. My special guest is Dr. SaLee Amina, a devoted woman, civil rights leader, author, writer, musician, singer, a very multiple talent young woman who have the title, the only title as the Goodwill Ambassador of Arabian and Muslim culture. Welcome to
Thank you.
Across the Pastor Desk.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you for the introduction. Had no idea I was so darn talented. Nevertheless.
Multiple talent.
Yeah, thank you for that. My passions, my biggest passion in life is doing good, being good, enjoining good, acknowledging good, encouraging good, commending good. So I think to put it in a nutshell, I would say I really believe in God and goodness, and doing it, living it, demonstrating it, making one's life an example, as opposed to just being like an inanimate object that can occupy space.
And you have a track record of humanitarian service to the world. And I was impressed when I first met you 30 years ago, and I'm impressed right now.
Yeah, that means we're both really old.
Well, we are maturing every day.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. I like
Yeah.
that. We're maturing every day.
And but I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, you've had some ups and you had some down. You have been struggling in the ocean, but you have achieved so much. What has been your lowest moment in your activities in resolving the crisis in America?
For our country, I think we have moved too far away from the golden rule. I think people no longer are considering each other as one humanity. I can remember in the good old days when people were far more conscientious of their neighbors. They were more polite, they were more respectful, they were more considerate. I would hope that we would move forward as a civilization. We've certainly moved forward technologically, but I think sociologically, as humanity, we've not made progress. If anything, there's been a retrograde. The unfortunate reality that I'm observing is that the negatives in life are getting stronger and stronger, and the positives are getting more diminished. There seems to be less and less people who are out there doing good and being good. And, you know, I think one of the problems is that people differentiate between good people, humanitarian people. They think of people who are religious and spiritual as if they're in one compartment on their own, excluding everything else. And it's not excluded. One can incorporate being good and doing good in every single aspect of their life, in everything that one does. They can do it as a good person, as a decent person, as a moral, as an honest person, as a person with integrity, a person with honor, a person who is noble, a person who is caring, compassionate, considerate. You know, sharing and caring isn't just for the religious community. It's for everybody.
I agree. And you have had some domestic experiences, and you have had civil experiences, and you have been criticized for helping and laying your life down for people.
You know, life is short and we all die. And everybody is so afraid of dying, which is so ridiculous because you really cannot avoid it.
I can't avoid it.
Absolutely. Guaranteed, positively, you will drop dead. And in my viewpoint, since it's going to happen anyway, it's better for you to put yourself at risk if it means something very noble, something very purposeful, something very meaningful. For example, our troops put their lives at risk every single day. Our law enforcement, whether we like all of the police or not, our law enforcement, when they put on that badge, they know they just made themselves a target. They know that. They have families at home. They have children at home. And every single day that they go out, they're putting their life at risk. Sometimes for people they don't even know. Most of the time for people they don't even know. That to me is a noble endeavor. Firefighters, they go into this, they don't know if they're going to come out alive. Yet they do it all the time. There's not a separation between people who are good or people who are religious or people who are spiritual and people who do the day in, day out, work-a-day world of life on planet Earth. It's all one, and it's all very, very intermeshed.
You are describing the art of diversity, and you bringing in different cultures, different infrastructures, and you're bringing in different styles of life and what they are experiencing. How do you see diversity in dealing with the women movement in the United States?
Well, for one, it is very obvious to me that God really, really loves diversity because he's created a heck of a lot of it.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. And my viewpoint is we fixate too much on our individuality. We fixate too much on I, me, mine. A lot of people are very ethnocentric. You know, my way is right, everyone else is wrong. And that just makes no sense to me. We are one humanity. We're created in God's image. And if we just operated as images of God, it's pretty hard to do bad things as an image of God. When I was working in Arabia, as you know, I'm a many-generation American.
Yes.
I even have immediate family members who are direct descendants of Alexander Hamilton. He is a founding father of the United States. He is a signatory to the Constitution. He was our first Secretary of the Treasury, best friend and ally of George Washington himself. America and everything that America stands for, it means an awful lot to me. But when I was in Arabia, a place that I really didn't know very much about before going there, I was surprised to open my eyes to a very noble, a profoundly noble culture. I'll give you an example. In America, if you happen to go shopping and you leave your purse somewhere, or you leave your wallet somewhere, or you even just leave your keys or your cell phone somewhere, chances are it's not going to be there when you go back for it. I had gone shopping and I could not remember where did I leave my purse. All the shops were in another language. It was all confusing. It was 4 days before I returned to find my purse sitting in the exact same place I had left my purse. How amazing is that? Another time I went out for dinner. Us girls seem to have a habit of putting our purse on top of the car as we're getting our last things out, locking it up, and I forgot it there. And I went in for dinner, had the dinner. When it came time to pay, I said, "Oh, where's my money? Oh, where's my purse?" Sure enough, an hour and a half later, I go out, and there it is, sitting on the roof of the car. Now, that probably would not have happened here in town or in many other cities, but it did happen there. And I said, you know, these people have a handle on something that we don't even have in the West. Their culture is very deeply ingrained with honesty, ethics, and yet we've gotten misinformation almost to the opposite about that culture.
I think so. See, the women movement in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries are different than what's the women movement in Africa. Can you give different features that's different and in addressing diversity?
Well, as concerns women, as concerns the movement, and as concerns being employed, for example, I've worked in both Africa and the Middle East. I've worked throughout the 7 Arabian Gulf countries and other Middle Eastern countries. I've worked throughout Europe. I've worked in 43 different countries. I feel that in Arabia, as you call it, they're all different countries. They all have all different cultures. You're probably referring most distinctly as concerns women and the image of oppression of women that so many people, in my opinion, misunderstand, seeming to think that Islam oppresses women, Arabs oppress women. I've heard this so much. It's not what I've experienced, and I think someone who's experienced it firsthand probably has a better grasp on it than someone who just happens to hear about it and has never been there in their life. In the Islamic religion, women are held up in very high regard, very highly respected. They asked the Prophet Muhammad, after God, who is the most important? And he answered, your mother. And the same person asked, after God and my mother, who is the most important? And he answered again, your mother. He said, okay, after God and my mother again, who is more important? And Prophet Muhammad said, your father. Allah comes first, and Allah is just the Arabic word for God. It's not a different God, it's not another God, it's not a special God. It's only a language. If you're a Christian and you say the word God, you use the word Allah. It's your language. If you're a Jewish person and you say the word God, you use the word Allah. And Americans sometimes misunderstand that. Women in Islam are very highly regarded, very much respected, treated delicately under most circumstances, treated kindly, more generously than one would treat men. And I observed that. And it's increasing as far as women being involved, more so in public society, in the workplace, even in government positions. And that's moving fast, very fast forward. When I first started working in the Arabian Gulf in 1980, yeah, I really am that old, women didn't have too many jobs. It was unusual for a woman to be in business.
Very limited.
But now there are women all over in ministerial positions. There's the very, very high positions being held by women now throughout the Arabian Gulf. In fact, the Saudi Arabian ambassador, this 2023, is Rima bin Bandar, bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. She is a proud daughter of Prince Bandar, extraordinary person, long reigning ambassador of Saudi Arabia. I think it was from 73 to 2000 that he was ambassador. Fabulous guy. And his children, Rima is now ambassador of Saudi Arabia to the United States. His son is ambassador to the UK. A woman in a very high diplomatic position, very high government position, a woman. Now, maybe 50 years ago that might not have happened, but it is happening now, and it's something we need to recognize.
Of course we should, and that is an achievement. But yet, there's riots, there are so many complaints. You wonder if you're getting the truth about women in these countries, because there's still a population of people who feel that the proper information is not coming out about their behavior and the way their men treat their wives and the men treat those women in working position. So therefore there are complaints and they expect someone to respond and answer.
Well, darling, I don't know if you've been watching the same news I've been watching, but it happens here in America also. And it is a terrible circumstance in America. Women are abused repeatedly. There's not a second that passes that some woman isn't getting beaten. I mean, it's just, this is not something that you could put a label on any individual country and say, oh, this country oppresses women. In the evolution of planet Earth, women are still among a group of people who are sometimes oppressed. it seems that there is maybe, I sort of think of it as our DNA that kept us alive as cave people when mostly men were out there being the warriors and the fighters and the hunters, and women were in the background, and women were the support force. That's very much in our DNA, and sociologically that has duplicated itself throughout history. I think when you talk about riots and the oppression of women, you may be referring to the recent situation with Iran.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Mahsa Amini, God rest her soul, was not, in someone's viewpoint, properly covered, and that was in Iran. And mind you, Iran is a completely separate country from Arabia. It's not even slightly Arab. It's a completely different culture, a very ancient culture. And after the Islamic Revolution, there was a stricter control of the manner in which women clothed themselves in public. So in their homes, they could dress however they wish. But when they go out in public, I believe what the government was trying to do is limit sexual enticement. I think they were trying to make for a more family-oriented environment. Kind of when we watch a movie and there's a designation of general audience, parental guidance advised, rated R, rated X, it was kind of like that. They were trying to create a public society that had a G recommendation.
Yes.
That if they're out in public, let them dress in a manner that is fit and proper for pretty much any family environment.
I think anybody listening to you can comprehend why the standards are so different and the way you express the answer. I really haven't heard it on that particular level. That was beautiful.
Well, thank you, sir.
I think now I can see more focusing on what the government is doing and what the public is doing in these Arabian countries. And now, prior to that, I thought it like the man was just trying to monitor and limited the liberties of the women and control them. But that's not the case. The way you express it, I really haven't heard any politician, any legislator or anybody from that country break it down like that. That's why I'm complimenting you on that.
Well, thank you, sir. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about the culture as well as about the religion. I've heard so many people degrade Islam. And mind you, I was raised Catholic. As a child, people asked me my religion, and I used to say, I have faith in faith, I believe in believing, and I care about caring. And strangely enough, I think that still is my spiritual base, that I just sincerely believe. You know, Jesus, who was an absolutely extraordinary leader and master and teacher, he always said to people, it's your faith that cured you. It's your faith. He always pointed to faith. Interestingly enough, he didn't say, it's your faith in the Torah, it's your faith in the Talmud, it's your faith in the religious teachings, it's your faith in the scripture, it's your faith in the Jewish religion, because he was a Jewish rabbi. He had 12 disciples just like every Jewish rabbi had. He spent his entire life teaching as a Jewish rabbi. And what did he teach? He taught Judaism. But every time he cured, he said, it's your faith that healed you. So in my viewpoint, and mind you, I'm just one person, I could be right, wrong, or somewhere in between, I think what Jesus brought to the world that was so vitally, vitally needed at the time, redefining faith and bringing love, real love, brotherly love, humane love, and forgiveness, the toughest one of all.
Yes.
Forgiveness. Toughest of all.
Yes.
Forgiveness. This was kind of unheard of back in the day when
Sure.
it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and every prayer seemed to be, condemn my enemies and gnash them and break them and make them suffer. And, that was religion. Jesus came along and said, no, actually, it's better to forgive them. What you may not know about the Islamic religion, which very greatly respects Jesus and the Virgin Mary. In fact, there's a chapter in the Quran named after Mary, chapter Miriam, it's called. What a lot of people don't understand is that in the Islamic religion, Jesus is very highly regarded and spoken of. It's surprising how that has been distorted, how that has been, in my opinion, perverted, in my opinion, lied about. There are so many things in the Christian religion that people think are exclusive unto Christianity, but that Islam is against or is the opposite of that. And frankly speaking, the vast majority of Christianity is Islam. The vast majority of Judaism, all of Judaism, is within Islam. Hard to believe that based on what you've been told or heard, right?
I think the confusion is rising.
You think it's getting worse?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's set the record straight.
See, there is a tradition, a religious tradition is what bounds so many people's minds. The new group today, they don't want to be bound to a tradition. They want to be liberal. And it's not only Islam, it's Christianity, it's all of the Buddhism, all of the religious denominations, and they just don't want to be bound to something that was written centuries ago.
Am I perceiving that you think being liberal is a negative thing to some degree? Because if there was any liberal on this earth, famous liberal, it was Jesus of Nazareth. Because that Jesus came along and he just overturned that apple cart. He even did it physically. He went into that temple and overturned everything and said, you're turning the house of God into basically a commercial enterprise. That was a very liberal thing to do, and that went very much against tradition. On top of that, the Jews were real traditionalists.
Yes, they were.
Kosher food, you
That's
can't eat
right.
this, and you can't eat this with that, and you can't eat that, and you can never eat that. And you certainly can never sit down with a non-Jew. That's just absolutely forbidden. Jesus came along and said, hey, it's all about God and goodness and love and forgiveness. Be kind, be caring. He had people among his followings who were absolutely hated in society. And they hated him for daring to love people who they said to hate. Don't associate with these people. Don't have anything to do with those people. And if they're not Jewish and if they're not kosher, you shouldn't have anything to do with them. That's going to pollute you. Stay away from them. Jesus was the ultra-liberal. And as far as liberal is concerned, did he liberate himself from the chains of life on planet Earth? I ask you that question.
Yes.
Yes. And that was his greatest of all miracles. Jesus rose into heaven, body and soul. And by the way, the Muslims believe that.
Sure.
And the Muslims believe that he is the Messiah. And the Muslims believe that he will come again as the Messiah. I hope he hurries up because things are getting really bad.
That's right. Well,
sorry, I get a little passionate about some things.
that's fine. That's fine. The way you express it is pretty clear. You are gifted and bring logic and order, and everybody can't do that the way you're doing it.
Thank you again, sir, for the compliment. Kind of you.
Now, instead of diversity, and instead of addressing the women culture in all of the nations around the world, I think we have cleared that. So we find out that President Carter thinks the same way you think about that.
Well, I don't know about the same way, but he's an
No,
absolutely amazing person.
He has legislation down that will liberate women.
Yes, and he also hired more women, more blacks, more Hispanics than any president before him. He was a very non-prejudiced person. He was a very good Christian, living a Christian life. And that's something I've always really admired about him and his wonderful wife, Rosalind. God bless them. They're still in here 2023. They're still going strong. You know, even in their very elderly years, they're living that example of just being a good person, participating in so many excellent humanitarian programs. President Carter, in his day, stepped outside the box.
What you say?
With forgiveness, for example.
Yeah.
With forgiveness. We all know that the worst war, the most unpopular war in all of history was the Vietnam War. What's the very first thing Jimmy Carter did when he became president? He became president on January 20th of 1977. On January 21st, he forgave all of the Vietnam War draft people who they were conscientious objectors, or they were just people who said, if you're going to ask me to give my blood up for my country, could you please make it a just and fair cause? And they didn't believe Vietnam was a just and fair cause. So many people moved to other places, such as Canada. First thing Jimmy Carter did is forgive them, forgive them, forgive them. He knew forgiveness. He lived forgiveness. And the first action he took as president was forgiveness. You know, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He also won the Medal of Freedom, highest civilian honor in our country. Extraordinary person, extraordinary person. And just in closing, Reverend, I want to thank you for inviting me here. I wish we had days to talk about President Carter, because you know I could talk about him for days. He's one of my favorite people. I put him right in there with Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Theodore and Roosevelt, Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, Bobby Kennedy, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, His Highness Sheikh Zayed. By the way, he visited His Highness Sheikh Zayed while he was in office. He invited the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia at the time, who then became King Fahd, to the White House. He stepped outside the box. He visited Iran. Thereafter, he visited India, Egypt, France, Belgium, Saudi Arabia.
And brought Nigeria and also
Yes,
generals.
Yes, the General Olusegun Obasanjo. He came. I worked as an advisor on a project for President Shehu Shagari. Obasanjo was the military president before Shehu Shagari, and he was the elected president thereafter. Thank you so much for inviting me. I loved talking with you.
Well, we've heard it from the Goodwill Ambassador of Islamic and Iranian culture. We're so happy that you were able to arrange your schedule to be with us today. I know you're very busy, and I know you're on your way to greater works, and you have our prayer support.
Thank you, sir.